Okay, in this video we want to convert from polar coordinates into rectangular coordinates. If this is the pole and here's the polar axis, and if we draw a point r comma theta, this is the directed distance r units, here's the angle theta, this point is r comma theta. Now to find an equivalent representation in rectangular coordinates, we draw the rectangular coordinates as well. Here's the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. And this point we're looking for is x comma y. Now to find it, we want to remember that we have a triangle, a right triangle. That the opposite side is y units, the adjacent side is x units, and the hypotenuse is r units. And remember that the cosine of theta is adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. So that gives us the cosine of theta is x over y. So x is r times the cosine of theta. And we do the same thing for the sine of theta. Is opposite divided by the hypotenuse. So we get the sine of theta is y divided by r. In solving for y, we have y is r times the sine of theta. So these two equations will give us an equivalent expression in rectangular form, so that if we know r and theta, we can always convert to x comma y. For example, we want to convert the point 3 comma pi over 6 into rectangular coordinates, x comma y. Well, we have x is r times the cosine of theta. That tells us x is 3 times the cosine of pi over 6. And y is r times the sine of theta. That's y is 3 times the sine of pi over 6. Now recall the unit circle, and we have a triangle. If this triangle, this angle is pi over 6, we have 1 to 2 to the square root of 3 would be the sides. And the cosine of pi over 6 is the square root of 3 over 2, and the sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So x is 3 times the square root of 3 over 2, which is 3 square root of 3 over 2, and y is 3 times 1/2, which is 3/2. Therefore, the point 3 comma pi over 6 in polar coordinates is equivalent to the point 3 square root of 3 over 2 comma 3 over 2 in rectangular coordinates. Let's look at another example. The question says convert the polar point 2 comma pi fourths into rectangular coordinates. Well, we have x is 2 times the cosine of pi over 4, and y is 2 times the sine of pi over 4. Now recall that the pi over 4 sine of 45 degrees and the cosine of 45 degrees are both the square root of 2 over 2. So x is 2 times the square root of 2 over 2, which is the square root of 2. And y is 2 times the square root of 2 over 2, which is also the square root of 2. So the polar point 2 comma pi over 4 is equivalent to the rectangular point square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 comma square root of 2. So if we know r comma theta, we can always figure out x comma y by those two equations. X is r cosine theta, and y is r sine theta.